I'm probably blurry, but we're just gonna start. Hello everybody and welcome to Uber Studios. I am the guy who's talking, Uber Mormon here. Today we're gonna talk about something called the window of tolerance and how that impacts your emotional stability and what that all has to do with emotional regulation. Now, if you're watching this and you're from the United States, then you did not learn this in high school, and that is a sham. That is garbage. That is stupid. That is fraudulent behavior on the part of school administrators. This is more important than math. This is more important than science. This is more important than Music 101. I think I had to take like a singing class when I was in 7th grade. Not that that wasn't helpful and not that you shouldn't learn all those things. This is 10 times more important than all of them, and I cannot wrap my brain around why you're not taught this as just a human being growing up in high school. It should definitely be required to graduate. You should have to take it as a junior or a senior, full stop. I'm just gonna say that all right now. And since it's not, now you have to turn to idiots like me on the internet to teach you these sorts of things. Do you see what the school administrators have made me do? Do you see what they've done to society? This is horse shit. All right. Rant over. The window of tolerance is the most clear way that I can explain the window of tolerance is essentially the safe zone within your nervous system where you haven't crept into fight or flight because of some sort of stress response, and you haven't sunk down into freeze, which is kind of like a stress response times 20. So let's put ourselves in our shoes for a moment, right? We are prey animals at the end of the day. There are a couple factors here that I want to just kind of lay down as groundwork because this can sometimes become a confusing issue. Your window of tolerance can get bigger and it can get smaller. And when we don't even know what it's called, usually it's pretty small. It grows over time as you experiment with it, as you stretch it, as you practice with it, as you come up with ways that help you stay within it. And we're going to talk about those. Essentially, I want you to imagine that you have a space that has a 0 in the middle of it. You have 1 through 10 going up, and you have negative 1 through 10 going down. This is your window of tolerance. Now, as you start to feel, as maybe deadlines are piling up, as maybe you're in an argument, life is happening to you slowly, and you're constantly kind of fluctuating within this window. Sometimes you cross into fight or flight. There's now too much stimulus to just be called stimulus. It's now become stress. Your body is going to try and fight that the only way that it knows how, but here's where we get the problem. Something just fell off my hat. Because we are mammals and because our nervous system is built after prey animals, our brain and our body don't exactly know what to do with psychological threats. And psychological threats are almost entirely what stress us out nowadays. So I want you to think about this. You're a zebra. It's a beautiful, bright, sunny day on the African plains. You notice a threat, which in this case would be some sort of a physical predator. So you see a lion, and immediately your mouth goes dry. So you are a zebra. Your digestion has ceased entirely. Your mouth is dry. Your legs are trembling. Your breathing is short and shallow. You can't get deep breaths anymore. Why is all this happening? Well, it's preparing you for the only way that you can escape from this threat, which is running away from it. So your legs are being charged with noradrenaline and adrenaline. Well, I think it's just adrenaline technically. Anyway, your legs are being charged with fight or flight response hormones, okay, which is probably adrenaline. Your mouth is going dry because it doesn't want to digest food anymore. That's not helpful. That's not going to keep you alive. And you're flighting, right? This is why it's called this. You're not going to fight the lion. You're going to run away from the lion. You're going to try and outrun it. So you're running. Well, bad news bears. The lion catches up with you. It jumps on you. It starts to eat you. This is very sad and very traumatic. I guess vegans, trigger warning. I don't know. It's nature, guys. Just, it happens. You get attacked by this lion. I don't know if you've ever seen like on those old shows where you watch the predator and the prey kind of do their little song and dance and play cat and mouse or whatever. But usually as soon as the predator arrives at the animal and actually gets it, you see it totally stop. It doesn't fight anymore. It's gone into freeze. Now it's just laying there. Okay. And it's just being eaten slowly, disemboweled, like it broke its temple valves. You could probably imagine that the zebra will then begin to dissociate. The most simple definition that I can kind of give for dissociation from like a psychological perspective is it's where you no longer are really connected to your body. You're kind of watching yourself from the outside. Your body is doing a thing and your brain is in another place. And sometimes people feel like they're watching themselves, or a very classic example that doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with you, it just has really, really good explanatory power, is you're driving and you're trying to get to your destination and you just kind of go on autopilot. Suddenly you're in your driveway and you're like, I kind of wasn't really paying attention the last few minutes, but I was safe and nobody was hurt. And I was driving safely. I just kind of, my mind was wandering, I guess. That's like, if that's happening to you too often and you're starting to forget what happened in the middle, and usually it's triggered by some sort of traumatic event, but we won't get into that. If you find that that is happening to you a lot, you should actually probably go talk to somebody about that. So how does all of this that I've just described apply to humans? We have our window of tolerance, which is our rest and digest. Okay, we're going to call it ventral vehicle. I'm going to go like this, and there's ventral vehicle, and I hope that I'm like somewhat within the frame. So we have ventral vehicle, and when we are overstimulated and we are jumping into fight or flight, that's called sympathetic. So sympathetic nervous system. And you've heard of this. That's still what it's called. Even if you go on the sympathetic and parasympathetic model, we're still here in sympathetic. And that is, you're kind of anxious. You kind of have like a burst of energy, but you don't really know what to dedicate it to. Overall, you feel generally unpleasant and you kind of feel like your wheels are spinning underneath you and you're not really going anywhere, right? That's kind of anxiety, stress, that's sympathetic, okay? So that is fight or flight. You are going into fight or flight. Now, if you feel so stressed that suddenly you shut down and you don't have any energy for anything, in the polyvagal model, you are in something called dorsal vagal. And that just means that you're kind of below your prime like if you're in a car, like you're running cold, right? You're below operating temperature. You are stuck, you are in freeze, you are shut down, you are panicked. You notice how like when a mouse sees a cat, it just kind of like doesn't do anything. There's probably some interesting parallels or maybe symbolism here. If you imagine that in the second Harry Potter, whenever somebody sees a snake, or even in kind of Greek mythology, when you see Medusa, you freeze. Right? And that is kind of, because we are prey animals, because our primate ancestors were super, super afraid of snakes, and they probably did have some sort of freezing effect on us. And we couldn't really run away. We were kind of too stunned in fear. You still kind of see mice and rats do this in the face of snakes, so it's really not that far of a jump. I'm just trying to come up with as many examples here so that this really hits home and it is a concrete idea and we can all relate to it in some way or another. Now we're going to talk about why the stress response that we have is strange for the world that we live in. As human beings with extremely high functioning cognitive abilities, we are now able to go into fight or flight when there's not a physical lion. In fact, most of the reasons that we go into fight, flight, or freeze is entirely psychological. So I'll give you an example of why I dropped out of college, because I went into freeze. So I was 23-ish and I had this math class. And I had a couple other classes that I wasn't doing too well in. And the previous semester, I was going under a lot of stress because I was trying to get married and my family was super against me marrying my wife, but we'll get into that story maybe another day. Anyway, I was under a lot of stress. I was trying to work and I was trying to do school and I was trying to kind of do full-time both, and it was really stressing me out. And I was working for a newspaper and I had this math class and it was online and there were no classes to show up to. You just did the assignments and turned them in and got the credit. I let that slip for like the first 2 weeks. And because it slipped, I started to feel really stressed about if I was going to be able to pass or not. Every time I had to imagine going and doing my homework to stay current, I imagined all the stuff that I already had to make up. And that stressed me out, and I would shut down and I would do nothing. And then a week would pass. And then that happened for 8 weeks. And I did 0 assignments. I did 0 tests. I got a 0%. Terrible score. Terrible score. And that stressed me out so much, and I was already under so much other stress that I just said, I can't do college anymore, and I just shut down. And I failed like 3 classes that semester. That is a real world example of kind of the fight, flight, or freeze happening due to a psychological threat. And a lot of the stressors that we encounter in our everyday life are psychological. You get stuck in traffic and you think you're going to be late. Your alarm goes off and you don't wake up, and then suddenly you wake up like 10 minutes later and you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna be late for work. And then you quickly and then you look at the time and you're like, I didn't oversleep by that much. Make a quick breakfast, I'll get out of here. You leave, and then you're like, whew, okay, I'm gonna be fine, I'm not gonna be late at all. And then you hit traffic, and then you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna be late again. And so it's 10 a.m. and you've gone into fight or flight 4 times already. Meanwhile, that zebra out on the prairie, on the savannah, is just kind of like munching, munch, 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 munch. Like it only goes into fight or flight due to actual stressors. And this cortisol that's going through our bodies when we're stressed out, not too good for our long-term health. Okay, it's super good for our short-term health. And I think the most simple way that I can kind of unpack that is by saying this. Have you ever been working up to a deadline, and then you're so stressed, you're so busy, you have so much going on, it's literally like wake up, work, run from here, go to there, do that thing, go to bed, do it all again, right? And it's like that for like a week, and you're just so stressed. And then the deadline comes, and it all ends, and then you get sick. Have you ever wondered why that happens? Well, it's because stress responses increase your short-term immune system. So during the time, because your body knows that you have to get through this, and so it kind of burns all of your resources to stay healthy, and then you kind of crash at the end of it. So I'm not saying it's good for your short-term health, because it's not good for your health to burn all of your resources at once, but it does improve the strength of your immune system for a short period of time, but it does damage your immune system, and it does have adverse health effects long-term. Okay, I've gotten into the weeds here, pun intended, and I'm going to try and wrap this up in a little bow. Why is it relevant to us whether we're in ventral vagal or dorsal vagal or sympathetic? Well, optimal functioning for you and for me happens within this window of tolerance. And sometimes it can be helpful to have a few things kind of stress you out enough to get you out of bed. Like, you don't want to be so relaxed and so calm that like somebody calls you and offers you an amazing job and you're just like, nah, I'm good. Life's good, man. It's all good. You don't want to be that person. But you don't want to be like, it sounds like way too complicated of a job. I don't think I can do it. I'm just going to stay in bed, right? You don't want to be either of those people, because the outcome is that you just stay in bed and that nothing gets done. So something that you could try, if you're starting to feel your mouth is going dry, your legs are starting to tremble, maybe take some deep breaths. And I know that sounds like an oversimplified answer, but what you are doing is you are telling your body there is no physical threat here, and I can prove that to you because I'm breathing deeply. Your body won't want to breathe deeply when it thinks you should run away from something. So it may sound counterintuitive, but practices like taking deep breaths, putting both of your feet flat on the floor, are actually really, really helpful, even though they seem kind of ridiculously simple. Another helpful thing that you can do, visualize in your head these 3 kind of physiological states that you could be in, and try and figure out, where am I? Am I in the middle of ventral vagal? Am I 70% out of ventral vagal? Am I 10%? Am I like 10 little percentage points away from going into freeze. Where am I exactly? The trick to understanding that you have a window of tolerance, and the trick to understanding yourself in these terms, as soon as you pinpoint where you are in a given window, the window expands immediately. So you give yourself room, you give yourself space to cope with something, and you're kind of just giving yourself a little bit of latitude and longitude to feel what you're feeling and understand what's going on from more of a meta angle than a in the middle of the heat angle. So I hope that this has been helpful. If it hasn't been, tell me in the comments. If it has been, send this to somebody who would find it useful. Thank you for watching. As always, if this content is helpful for you, do the things that YouTubers ask you to do, please, on my channel. I would appreciate it. Send me comments if you have questions or maybe if I made a mistake in my explanation here and you want to correct me, or if you have another topic that you think I should look into. I would appreciate all of those things. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one.